A storm tore through the Wyoming sky, lightning jagged as a broken promise, and in its roar, a cry, faint, human, desperate, called Zephaniah Northwood to a fate he never sought. Subscribe now to follow this tale of grit, trust, and a home carved from the wild, where two lost souls find something worth keeping. In the Wyoming Territory, September 1887, lightning carved the sky above the Wind River Range like a blade through canvas. Thunder rolled, deep and bone-rattling, shaking the earth as if it had secrets to spill. Elias Caldwell, a man carved from the hard timber of loss, pulled his weathered duster tight against the biting wind. Rain lashed his face, cold as a widow's grief, as he urged his gelding, Rusty, through the downpour. The horse's hooves churned mud, each step a fight against the storm's fury. He should have stayed in his cabin that morning when the clouds swallowed the peaks, their edges bruised purple and heavy with threat. But the cattle had scattered in the night, spooked by something wilder than the wind, and Elias couldn't abide the thought of them falling to wolves, or worse, to the slow, gnawing hunger of a coming winter. His breath steamed in the air, mingling with the rain, as he pressed on toward the shadowed draw near the ridge. Then he heard it. Faint, muffled by the storm's howl, but unmistakable, a human cry, raw and trembling, like a thread snapping under strain. Elias reined in hard, Rusty snorting, hooves slipping in the slick earth. He squinted into the darkness, rain stinging his eyes like nettles. The cry came again, closer now, desperate. "Who's there?" he shouted, voice swallowed by the wind. Another flash of lightning lit the slope, revealing a figure slumped beside a fallen pine, soaked through, a tattered bonnet clinging to tangled chestnut hair. He dismounted fast, boots sinking into the mud, and knelt beside her. Her eyes, wide and gray as the storm itself, held fear, and something deeper, a quiet defiance that hadn't yet broken. "Don't touch me," she said, voice sharp despite the shiver racking her frame. Water streamed down her face, mingling with dirt and what might have been tears. Elias raised his hands, palms open. "I won't hurt you, ma'am. But you'll freeze out here." She didn't move, her body curled tight, as if she could will herself invisible. "I'm taking you somewhere warm," he said, voice low, steady as the earth beneath them. She blinked, water pooling in the hollows of her cheeks, but said nothing. Elias shrugged off his duster, the oilskin heavy with rain, and draped it over her shoulders. He lifted her gently, her weight far too light for a woman who'd walked this far. Rusty danced nervously as Elias hoisted her into the saddle and climbed up behind, her frame pressed against his chest, trembling but silent, like she was trying to disappear into the storm. The ride to his cabin, a mile up the ridge, was slow, the wind screaming through the pines. The woman stayed quiet, her breath shallow, her body rigid. Elias kept his arms steady, shielding her from the worst of the rain. The cabin came into view, a squat, weathered structure of logs and chinked mud, its chimney a stubborn sentinel against the storm. He kicked the door open with a boot and carried her inside, setting her on the cot near the hearth. Lighting the lantern, he cast a golden glow across the room, revealing the sparse simplicity of his life, a rough-hewn table, a single chair, a rifle propped in the corner. "Fire first," he muttered, kneeling to strike a match. The kindling caught, crackling to life, its warmth pushing back the damp chill. She spoke then, voice small, like a sparrow caught in a gale. "I didn't know where else to go." Elias glanced back. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue, her bonnet now a sodden heap beside her. "No need to explain," he said. "Let's get you warm." He stripped off his soaked shirt, hanging it near the fire, and handed her a wool blanket from a cedar chest. She stared at him a moment, then wrapped the blanket tight, her fingers white-knuckled around its edges. "I'm Elias Caldwell," he said, offering a tin cup of warmed water. "You got a name?" She hesitated, eyes flicking to the fire as if it might consume her. "Clara Hensley," she said finally, voice barely above a whisper. "Where were you headed, Clara?" She looked down into the cup, her reflection wavering in the dim light. Nowhere. A pause, then softer, I was running. Elias sat across from her, close enough to feel the fire's heat but far enough to give her space. Running from what? Her fingers tightened around the cup. My husband died last winter. Pneumonia took him fast. The ranch hands left soon after, and the bank came calling. Said the land wasn't mine to keep. I had nowhere left, so I walked. The storm caught me near the ridge. Her voice cracked, but her eyes stayed dry, as if she'd spent all her tears long ago. Elias studied her. High cheekbones framed a face smudged with dirt, but there was a quiet strength beneath it, like a river stone worn smooth by years of current. Lines of grief etched her mouth, too deep for someone so young, mid-twenties, he guessed, though hardship aged a body faster than time. You said was, he noted. Means you're alone now. Clara nodded, her gaze fixed on the cup. I've got no one. He leaned back, a tug in his chest he hadn't felt in years. You do now. Her eyes lifted, searching his face for a lie and finding none. Why would you say that? She asked. Because I'm not the kind to leave someone crying in the mud. Her lip trembled, but she looked away. I wasn't crying for help, she whispered. I was just crying. Elias didn't press her. He stood, moved to the stove, and heated a skillet. You hungry? She nodded, barely perceptible. He cooked beans and cornbread, the scent filling the cabin as the storm raged outside. They ate in silence, the fire's crackle their only companion. Afterward, Clara curled up in his duster by the hearth, staring into the flames as if they held answers. Elias fixed a pallet across the room, giving her space, and banked the fire for the night. As he lay down, arms behind his head, her voice cut through the quiet. Why are you up here alone? He answered without opening his eyes. I was a ranch foreman near Laramie. Lost my wife, Sarah, in childbirth 3 winters back. The babe didn't make it either. Couldn't face the town after that, so I came here. The wind howled, but the cabin held warm and still. Clara's voice softened. I'm sorry. He nodded once. Me too. She was quiet so long he thought she'd drifted off. Then, a whisper, so faint he nearly missed it, thank you for stopping. Elias opened his eyes, shadows dancing across the ceiling. I heard you cry, he said. That's all. But it was more. He hadn't felt this pull in years, this quiet urge to protect, to build something beyond himself. And Clara, who hadn't trusted a soul in longer than she could recall, felt the first stirrings of safety. Outside, the storm began to fade, thunder trailing into distant murmurs. Inside, something unspoken took root, fragile, but warm. By morning, the storm had spent itself, leaving a brittle silence over the ridge. Mist hung low, softening the world into grays and silvers, the air sharp with the scent of wet pine. Elias stepped outside early, the door creaking behind him, and crouched by the woodpile, stacking logs in the crook of his arm. His hands moved deliberately, not from fatigue but from a need to keep his thoughts steady. Inside, Clara stood barefoot near the stove, her hair dry now but loose, a half-started braid unraveling at her shoulder. She'd stirred the embers back to life and warmed the skillet, the scent of bacon curling through the air. Elias brought in the wood, setting it by the hearth. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, she replied, not looking up. But I used your blanket. Seemed fair. He poured water into the basin, washing his hands. You always settle debts that fast. She flipped the bacon, her movements sure. I try. But I've got more owing than I'll ever pay off. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Her shoulders stayed tight, like she was braced for something to break. You planning to keep running? He asked. Clara turned, lifting the skillet and scraping bacon onto 2 tin plates. There's nowhere left to run. She sat across from him at the table, her fingers thin, knuckles raw from cold and work. "That's not the same as wanting to stay," he said. She stared out the window, fog curling against the glass. "I don't know what I want. I only know what I don't." Elias nodded, fork scraping softly as they ate. Her eyes drifted to the saddlebag she'd set near the door the night before, its leather worn and sagging. "What's in it?" he asked. She hesitated. "Ledger books. My husband, Thomas, kept records. He believed in order, thought it'd protect us." Elias sipped his coffee, slow. "Did it?" "No," her voice was flat, final. "You keep them because they matter, or because you don't know what to do without them?" Her fingers tightened around her fork. Somebody should remember he tried. He let that settle, then stood to clear the plates. Clara stepped onto the porch, arms folded tight across her chest. The mist was lifting, revealing the sweep of grassland and the dark line of pines beyond. Elias joined her, pulling a dry shirt over his head. "I've got fences down," he said, nodding toward the horizon. "Cattle scattered. I could use help." She met his gaze. "I know how. We had hands, but when they left, it was just me." He nodded. "You ride?" "Not pretty," she said, "but I stay on." They saddled 2 horses, Rusty, his steady gelding, and a smaller roan named Sage for hauling supplies. Clara mounted without help, her skirt hitched above sturdy boots. They rode side by side through the low hills, the grass still green where frost hadn't touched it. The air smelled of thawed soil and pine sap. Elias pointed out a broken rail near the creek bed, and Clara dismounted first, lifting the post with both hands while he steadied the crossbeam. They worked in near silence, the rhythm of hammer and wood filling the space between them. She didn't shy from the mud or the weight, her movements practiced, precise. When a calf bawled in the distance, Clara turned, eyes narrowing as if she already knew the task ahead. By late afternoon, they'd mended 3 rails and coaxed 3 calves back through the gate. Elias watched her brush hair from her face, dirt streaking her cheek. "You're not afraid of the work," he said. "I was born to it," she replied. "Folks think women can't manage land, but we do. Just not always loud enough to be noticed." He gave a soft chuckle. "You're being noticed now." A shadow of warmth crossed her face. "You don't ask questions like other men." "Maybe I'm not like other men." She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. They rode back as the sun dipped, casting amber shadows across the grass. At the cabin, Clara unsaddled Sage with care, hanging the bridle on a peg. Inside, she took down her braid, combing it out by the window, her back to him. The fire glowed low and steady. Elias poured water into the kettle. "You planning to sleep inside tonight?" She didn't turn. "Unless you'd rather I didn't." He stepped closer, careful not to crowd. "I'd rather you did." She turned slowly, eyes meeting his. "Then I will." The wind picked up outside, but it sounded softer now, less like a threat, more like a song weaving through the pines. The quiet in the cabin stretched long and easy, a silence not of caution but of something growing, like roots finding purchase in rocky soil. The next morning, frost laced the window panes, delicate as spiderwebs. Elias stepped outside before dawn, his breath clouding in the cold as he hauled oats to the lean-to. When he returned, Clara sat at the table, a pencil in hand, sketching on a scrap of paper. He set his gloves on the stove rail. "Didn't hear you get up." "Couldn't sleep," she said, not looking up. "Your floor creaks like it's got secrets." He glanced at her page, a rough map of fence lines and pastures. "What are you writing?" "Trying to remember our old place," she said, tapping the paper. "I used to walk every fence with Thomas before the frost came. Thought drawing it might hold it longer." Elias filled the kettle and sat across from her. "You planning to try for another piece of land?" I don't know what I'd do with it, she said. But I don't like forgetting what it felt like to belong somewhere. He leaned back. There's land past the second ridge. Belongs to no one, if you're willing to fight the rock and cold for it. I've fought worse, she said. He nodded. Then maybe you'd take a look with me when the sun's higher. She folded the paper and tucked it into her pocket. I'd like that. After breakfast, they climbed the slope on foot, frost softening under their boots. The sun crested the trees, its warmth spilling slow across the hills. Elias led, pausing to point out elk tracks or where snowmelt shifted the ground in spring. Clara kept pace, her eyes sharp, taking in every detail. At the ridge's crest, she stopped, breath catching. Below stretched a long hollow, rimmed by pine and lit gold by the morning sun. A creek wound through it, gleaming like quicksilver. I didn't expect it to be so open, she said. Most folks pass it by, Elias replied. Too much work to clear. She crouched, brushing her hand over wild rye, its blades damp with dew. It's good earth. Settles different when it's been left alone. He watched her fingers press into the soil, sure and steady. Land remembers who's kind to it. She rose, meeting his gaze. You sound like you've talked to it yourself. I've listened, he said. They lingered through midday, walking the clearing's edge, marking where snow piled deepest and where rock broke through. Clara asked about windbreaks and water rights, her questions sharp, practical. Elias answered with the steady knowledge of years spent tending what others abandoned. At the hollow's far end, they sat on a fallen log, sharing dried venison from his coat pocket. Clara chewed slowly, her gaze on a hawk circling high above. My mother died when I was 16, she said, voice low but even. Buried her under the cottonwoods behind our barn. After that, I stopped talking so much. Thomas never minded. He liked quiet. Elias listened, letting her words settle. I don't miss him the way folks expect, she continued. But I miss the steadiness, knowing someone else would rise when I did, sleep when I lay down. He shifted, elbows on his knees. Steadiness matters more than folks give it credit for. She looked at him. I've seen men who talk promises and men who keep them. You're the second kind. I don't make many, he said. But I don't break the few I do. They sat as the sun warmed their necks, the creek murmuring below. By dusk, they returned to the cabin. Clara gathered pine kindling while Elias checked the horses. Inside, she stirred flour into a bowl, sleeves rolled past her elbows, hair tied back with muslin. You sure you want to cook again? He asked, leaning against the doorframe. I don't like sitting idle, she said. Besides, I make better biscuits than conversation. He smiled faintly. We'll test that theory. That night, after supper, Clara sat by the hearth, a shawl around her shoulders, legs tucked under her. Elias mended a tear in his saddlebag, the needle moving by muscle memory. She broke the quiet. You think we're meant to be alone after we lose someone? He didn't answer right away. Some find their way back, he said finally, if they let the hurt be part of the map. She studied the fire. And if they're not? Then they stay lost longer, he said. But not always forever. Her gaze met his. You still believe in a future? He set the needle down. I believe in today. The rest can grow from that. She looked at the floor, then back at him. Would it trouble you if I stayed a while longer? No, he said, quiet and sure. It wouldn't trouble me one bit. Her shoulders eased, and for the first time, she seemed to trust the ground beneath her wouldn't shift. When the last snow melted from the north-facing slope, the creek swelled with meltwater, tumbling over stones with a restless song. The air carried the scent of thawed pine and rich, dark soil waking from winter's sleep. Clara stood at the clearing's edge, sleeves rolled high, skirt pinned at the knees, marking rows with a trimmed stick. Her eyes tracked each furrow with quiet focus, as if the earth itself might speak if she listened closely enough. Elias watched from the cabin steps, a sack of seed corn against his hip. "You've got a straight line," he said. She glanced over, brushing hair from her face. "Used to tie string between stakes, but I've learned to trust my eye." He dropped beside her. "Mind if I walk it with you?" She handed him the stick. "Let's see if your hands are as steady as your talk." They worked side by side, the rhythm easy now. She marked, he followed, pressing the soil with his boot. The sun climbed, their shadows stretching long across the furrows. Clara broke the quiet. "That hollow you showed me, it stays dry through spring?" "Mostly," he said, dusting his hands. "A little standing water near the creek, but it drains quick." She nodded, eyes distant. "If I built a lean-to there, I'd need to fell pine. Could use those trunks near the east fence." Elias paused. "That a thought or a plan?" "I don't make plans without thinking first," she said. He stood, brushing dirt from his trousers. "Then we'll see to it. I've got tools enough, and the saw's sharp." She looked up at him, then down at the line they'd made. "You'd help me with that?" "If you mean to stay," he said, "it's no longer just yours to build." They planted seed by hand, one every few inches, the way Elias's father had taught him. By mid-afternoon, the rows were set, and Clara leaned on the hoe, sweat beading at her brow. "You move like you've always belonged to this land," he said. "I don't belong to much," she replied, "but I know how to listen." They washed at the creek, kneeling on flat stones, the water cold and fast. Clara cupped her hands, letting the current spill through. Elias sat back, watching her capable fingers. "I never asked what you'd have done if I hadn't come along." She let the water fall. "I'd have walked till my feet gave out. Maybe found a tree to sleep under." "You don't talk like someone who gives up easy." "I don't," she said. "But I was close." The wind rustled the willows. Elias pulled a pebble from the streambed, rubbing it between his fingers. "You found something steadier than what you had?" She turned to him. "I think I found someone who hears quiet things." He met her gaze, her words settling deep. "That's not something I set out to be." She smiled, not wide but true. "It's still what you are." They walked back slow, boots leaving prints in the soft earth. The cabin smelled of ash and warm bread. Clara broke a loaf in half, handing him a piece. "You ever think about what comes next?" she asked. "I think about what holds," he said. "What doesn't wash out with a storm." She nodded. "And if something holds, you keep it." "I do." She tore off a piece of bread. "Then maybe I'll build that lean-to. And maybe I won't leave it behind come winter." Elias held her gaze. "I'd like that." The days lengthened, the wind softer now, no longer carrying winter's bite. Clara stood barefoot on a cleared patch near the cabin, raking loose earth. Her skirt hem was dark with dust, her hands lined with labor, but her face held a quiet steadiness, like the stillness after a storm. Elias approached from the pines, a bundle of fence wire over his shoulder. "Westgate's holding," he said. "Walked it to the gulch." She nodded, adjusting the rake. "I boiled willow bark this morning." "Your shoulder's been tight since we hauled that timber." He set the wire by the barn. "You watching me that close?" "I watch what matters." He stepped closer, the sky streaked with faint orange. "You always speak that plain." "No," she said, brushing her brow. "But I've lived enough silence to know when truth's better." He looked at her, something in his posture easing. "I've been thinking. That land above the creek, it's yours if you want it." She tilted her head. "And what would you keep?" "The rest," he said, "and maybe a place beside you, if you've got use for it." She didn't speak right away. The wind lifted her hair, and she let it fall. "You're not offering charity. I'm offering a life." Her voice was low. "I didn't come here looking for one." "I know. But you found something, didn't you?" "I did." She stepped toward him, slow and sure, until their hands met, rough palm to rough palm. "I won't run again." "You don't have to." That night, by the hearth, her chair pulled close to his, Clara mended a curtain with careful stitches. Elias smoothed the new handle onto a draw knife, the air thick with pine pitch and bread. "I want to raise chickens again," she said. "Not for profit. Just for the steadiness." He set the tool down. "I'll build you a coop." She nodded. "And maybe a small fence for a garden. I've got seeds put aside. I'll dig the trench." She smiled, just enough to crease her cheek. "You always answer like that? No hesitation?" "I know what I want." She turned to him, needle resting in her lap. "Then say it." He reached for her hand, warm beneath his. "I want this. You and me. A life that doesn't ask for more than we can give. Shared work, quiet nights, a roof we both belong to." She looked at him, whatever she'd held back softening. "Then it's yours. I'm yours." They married 2 weeks later beneath the cottonwood by the creek, its roots firm, the water never running dry. Elias carved 2 rings from shed antler, polished smooth. Clara wore hers on a leather cord against her skin, he wore his on his smallest finger, never taking it off. Over the summer, the garden grew in neat rows, and the coop filled with hens clucking like they'd always belonged. They built a lean-to for shade, a place to sit and talk low about what needed tending. By fall, the corn stood tall, and Clara canned peaches and beans while Elias stacked wood high along the north wall. They moved through their days with ease, not needing to fill the silence. When winter came, it was gentle, not for lack of snow, but because the warmth inside the cabin never faltered. They sat close on long nights, her head on his shoulder, his thumb tracing her wrist. They never spoke the word love, but they lived it, in every shared cup, every glance across a field, every night they chose to sleep side by side. Their pasts lingered, softened by time and the steadiness of new days. They built a home that held through every season, a bond that asked only for what was freely given. And in that quiet corner of Wyoming, where the wind now whispered instead of howled, Elias and Clara lived in peace, side by side, never alone again. What did you think of Elias and Clara's journey? Vote in the poll below. Should they stay and build their life in the hollow, or seek new horizons beyond the ridge? Drop your choice and share your thoughts.